Hi everyone, Sarah here from Sarah Humphrey Creates. So my channel where I have a little bit of a play around and do some creative stuff and things that I can't do on my other embroidery channel. And I'm here today finally making this video about my temperature sampler. Ta-da! So it's finished, hooray! Only a week overdue, so not too bad. So I'm going to talk to you about this temperature sampler. This is my 2021 project, how I made it, and how you can make one as well if you want. So do stick around to see how to do that. Okay, so it's ready to come off the frame, but before I show you that, what's a temperature sampler? So kind of the beginning of 21, people were doing a lot of these. They were very popular. They were knitting and crocheting blankets, and every row that they did was a different colour depending on what the temperature was where they were that day, and when the temperature changed, the colour changed, and they were knitting this blanket, and it was kind of a record of the temperature where they were every day. And I thought, well, I don't really knit or crochet very much, if at all, so I thought, well, I'll just make one out of stitch instead. I'll just stitch one. So that's what this is. I don't know if anyone's done one before. I haven't actually looked, so this is my version of that, and it's a different row for every day, and a different colour, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So let's just have a little closer look at the end bit before we get it off the frame. So you can see my sampler here. So this is the end part. This is December, probably a bit of November as well. Here's the last row here. So a different row for each day of the year, and the colour changed depending on what the temperature was. I did also do some different stitches as well, just to make it more interesting and more texture, and I've added other things to it. So this day here you can see there's some sequins. So the sequins were snow, the days it snowed, and the beads are the days that it rained, and I tried to represent the number of beads for how much rain we had. So if there's fewer beads in the row, it didn't rain so much, and if there's lots of beads, it rained all day, which it does a lot in this country. So I do want to point out at this moment, this works better in northern climes. If you're in a beautiful sunny place in the world and it just sunshines all day, not going to look so interesting. But where I live in the north of Nottinghamshire in England, we get quite a bit of variation in weather, so I was able to do this and get lots of nice colours, and you can see how the colours have changed already. This is sort of just December here, and we've gone from snow to quite nice warm weather, to rain, back to quite nice warm weather, back to really cold, back to rain. So there's enough going on to make it interesting, so you might want to think about that if you're interested in doing one yourself. So I'll talk about the colours that I chose and the stitches that I chose in a minute, but I haven't actually seen the whole thing yet because it's wrapped around a frame, so I'm really excited to actually get it off and look at it and see what it looks like, and to show you as well. So let's do that first, and then I'll talk about the process and how I made it. So I just want to mention the frame that I used first. So this is a roller bar frame. So if you can see it here, these parts turn here, and you can roll your fabric around, which means you can have a nice long length of fabric. You can only have it as wide as the frame you've got, but you can have it as long as you like, because you can just turn these, you loosen them off on the back, you can turn these and you wrap it around the frame, and means you can move it up and down. So I was able to do the whole year on one frame. So those are really good if you've got a project like that. So that's what I'm using here. If you want to know how to put your fabric on a frame like this, I've got a video on, I think it's exactly this frame actually, so you can check that out up here. That's on my other channel, my embroidery channel, but that goes through step by step how to put your fabric on a frame like this, so you'll find that really useful if you've not done that before. Okay, so I covered my fabric up just to keep it clean because it was on for the whole year. So I'll just take those pins out. That's just covering it up. So if I just uncover that, so you can see a bit more of it. So there's the end of it, and you can see this is summer, so it's quite nice and warm here compared to what's going on down here. And let me just show you how I've done this. So again, there's a video you can check out if you want to know how to do this from beginning to end in really good detail. So I've just got some tape applied to the fabric here. So this is an Aida fabric, it's a cross stitch fabric, and the tape on it, and then the string goes around the tape, and that tensions it that way, and then the rollers tension it that way. So it's not really tight, but it's firm enough so I can get some nice neat stitching. So I'm going to undo the string and get it off the frame. This is just done with slip knots, so it should come undone fairly easily. So it's best when you're taking something off the frame to loosen it a little bit at a time. So when you put it on, you tighten it one way and then you tighten it the other, and then you do a bit more that way. So you need to really do the same in reverse, just so it doesn't do anything sudden. It's not going to matter too much with this because it's only some stitching and a few beads. So I've undone all the ends here, and then I can just pull that string out. Put a knot in it. Like so. So just loosen off the string, and that will loosen the tension across, like so. And then I'm going to turn it over. Now these are what's holding the tension on the bars, so these winglets just need to come undone. So unwrap the string from them. So I'm loosening these bars off. So now I can turn these, and that will loosen it that way. Flip it back over, and now I can basically take the whole thing off, so I can just pull this string out. You can save your string for another project if it's not in too bad condition. There we go, string's off, and then I can unwrap these because I've loosened it off, hopefully. Just pull out my fabric that was just protecting it. Do the same on the other side. So it's loose on the frame now, so I'm going to get the webbing tape off. So it's just been over sewn down here with buttonholes, so I'm going to pick all that off now, and then I'm going to cut the top off and we can see the whole thing. I'm quite excited about this. So I'll join you again when I've done that, because you don't want to watch me do that particularly. So you can keep these little bits of webbing if you want, if you just give it a little pull, close up the holes. These are good to use again and again, so don't need to waste it. So you can tidy that and keep those. I'll tidy them up later. Just get these little bits of thread out. So every time I moved it up the frame, I had to move that webbing with it. So I did that a couple of times, I think, so I could pull it straight all the way across. So let's get it off. I'm excited, just want to see it. So I'm going to just unravel it right back to here. Now I'm going to talk about how much fabric I used in a minute to work out how much I needed. So it's quite interesting to see I had that much left. I did worry halfway through it was going to run out. So I squashed my stitches up a little bit to make sure I didn't, but I had plenty. Could have got another couple of months in there. So I'm going to undo the stitching on here. So this is holding it to the webbing here. And then I'm going to do the same at the bottom, and then I can see the whole thing. So I'll do that now. So I've done one end. I'm going to unroll this now. Now this should be quite a lot of this, so I can kind of see what it looks like, but I'm just going to cover it up a bit because I want to see it all in one go. Looks like we're getting colder again. Little beads. Oh, little bee. There we go. To the beginning. So again, I'm going to cut this off. I'm not going into this in too much detail because that's all on that video, how to do this, so do check that out. But just snip through this quickly. It's off. Right, let's get rid of all these little ends. Project. So I actually know how long it is, so let's have a look. Oh, it's really long. My goodness, it is long. I'll do it this way. Which is the top. So January's down here, 21, December 21 up here, so it's actually pretty long. Let's have a look in a bit more detail. Now I suppose now that I look at it, maybe I should have gone the other way. I don't know, actually. So the year starts at the bottom and go to the top. Maybe it would have made more sense if it went the other way. It is what it is. So let's have a little look and see what we got in here. So January, let's come in even closer. Go nice and close. So pretty cold. So I'll talk about the colours in a second because I just want to have a look through it first. So the coldest it got, basically, really, really cold. And then I'm just going to pull it down. You can see it bit by bit. Snow, quite a bit of snow around here. It was very cold, I seem to remember, so I actually put a Swarovski crystal on it there. This was the first bumblebee of the year I saw, and this was on a woodland walk that I did local to me. We went, I think, hunting for snowdrops. And a bumblebee. Weather's getting warmer. Interesting here, more snow. So pretty warm here, so the yellows are getting darker, so the darker the yellow obviously the warmer it got, but when it cold again, a tiny little bit of snow and a bit of ice. This must be spring coming now, beginning of summer. Still quite a bit of rain though, rains a lot in England. Really nice bit of warm weather here. Now this, just looking at the rest of it, which you can't see at the minute, but I'll show you in a second, is about as warm as it got. Now I did have colours to go warmer because the year before we had a really, really hot bank holiday weekend in August, I remember that, and it was scorching for this country. It was scorching, but it didn't get that hot last year, so the highest we got was this deep orange colour. So that was the warmest bit we had, but yeah, not a great summer. Quite a lot of rain. Got another warm band here, and what's really lovely about doing this sample is you've got no idea when this stripe's going to appear, if it's going to appear, or what it's going to look like, and I really like that spontaneity of it. Just chose some different beads, really no reason particularly. So getting cooler again now, autumn's here. And then back into December. Again, those slightly warm spells, bit of snow, bit of rain, it all happened in November and December, and there's the end of it. So that's all of it in one go. So I'm going to have a little look at it now, closer look, because I haven't seen it properly. See what condition it's in, whether it's pulled or anything like that, because I need to decide what to do with it, and then I'm going to show you the process I used to design it, to make it, how I chose my colours and all that sort of thing, so stick around for that. Okay, so the main thing you need to do if you want to do something like this is keep a record of the temperatures. A stitch every day, a row every day isn't that much, but there are going to be days when you can't do it, and then you're going to go, oh no, what temperature was it Wednesday last week, and you're not going to know. So this is what I did. I printed a calendar off the internet. It was a free calendar from Calendarpedia. I'll put a link below the video, in the description below the video, if you want to print one of those off, just so I could record the temperatures on it. So and I crossed it off when I did it, so important that you're quite methodical about this, because it's very easy to get lost and know which yellow day you're on, which sunny day you're on. So do keep quite a good record of this. So I just wrote them down every day, so either the day that it was, and I checked. If I had missed a few days, I did find a website that gave you past weather temperatures, and I kept that on my phone and I just looked at that as well. So I'll put a link for that as well in the description below the video in case you miss a day and you need that. I'm not sure how many countries that's for. I'll double check that, but there should be some data on the internet if you can't find previous temperature data. So I also noted down if it did anything. So R for rain, S for snow, I was ice. Anything else on there? I put it a small r. I got quite technical with it after a while because I started sort of developing it. That what else can I do on this? And I put a small r if there wasn't much rain and a big R if there was lots of rain. Sometimes I put an R near the beginning of the day to say it rained in the morning. A couple here. Or at the end of the day if it rained at the end of the day, but you can put as much detail in as you wanted to. But this is the heart of the whole project. This little bit of paper went everywhere the sampler went, and once I'd done that day I just put a line through it to say that I'd done it, because otherwise you will end up with more than 365 days of stitching, or less, depending on what you miss out. So this is really important, so I kept that record with the sampler and a pencil so that I could easily mark off when I had done a day. Now on the back, it's not a very beautiful design, but it worked. I only needed one piece of paper as well. So these are my temperatures that I worked out. Now I just had to think about this, and if I did another one I might tweak them slightly, because there was a lot of yellows. You can see them down here that were quite similar, and if I'd used different yellow threads then I might have got more of a pattern in it. So maybe something to think about, because I didn't know how much yellow I was going to have on it. So that might be something to think about if I did it again, is my colours. So I just did temperature down here. I'll zoom in on this a little bit. So I did -5 to -2, doesn't often get below that in this country. And then I kind of did every few degrees, so 3 or 4 degrees, so -1 to 1 degree, 2 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 14, 15 to 18, 19 to 22. So if you live somewhere that you didn't have so much of a variation, you could do a much smaller range. You could do every degree or 2 degree change and you'd still get something really pretty. So you could adapt it to wherever you are in the world. And then I picked the colours. So I started with turquoise, which was my coldest. So I was thinking of icebergs and blue and really, really cold. So not just white necessarily. So I went turquoise first. Then I had a variegated turquoise, and then a blue, white, pale yellow, medium yellow, dark yellow, orange, dark orange, red, etc. So that bit's quite fairly logical to break up my temperature. So every time the temperature was between 11 and 14 degrees on that day, the row was stitched in pale yellow, and I wrote the number of the thread. I'll show you those in a second as well, because some of them look quite similar, so I made sure I did that. And what I've also got here is the colour of beads that I used. So I found a packet of beads that went with every thread colour, and I wrote that number down as well. So if it was raining on that day, that was the colour bead I needed. So I've been quite organised about this, just because if you do have a bit of time away from it, I did leave it for a while, for quite a few weeks actually, and you come back to it and you think, oh, what was I doing and what colour? So it was good to have it all written down. And we didn't go past dark orange this year. We would have gone up to the red if it had been the year before, but so dark orange was the darkest, but I had a couple more colours just in case the weather did something really freaky. So I kept that on the back and referred to that all the time. So those are the two pieces of information I had, was the temperature, what the weather was doing every day, and the colours that I used. And I did just write a list here. I'll show you this quickly, of stitches that I used. You could just do it all in one stitch, cross stitch, or whatever stitch you like, but I just thought it was more interesting to have some other stitches in there, and I quite enjoyed fitting the stitches together, because I didn't design this and I'm used to doing that quite intricately. I sort of felt like I needed a bit of control over it and I needed an input into it. So I chose the stitches, and sometimes I fit them together nicely, or make a pattern out of them, or repeat them or something, just so it did something interesting texturally. So I wrote some stitches down as well. So I've done some cross stitch, buttonhole, cable chain, running stitch, whipped running, satin stitch, back stitch, stem stitch, woven back stitch, French knots I even did a few of in there, obviously beads as well. We've got videos on loads of those stitches on the embroidery channel, so do check those out, and I'll just show you a few on the actual sampler as well. So that's the bit of paper that you need to do. So if you want to have a go at one, print yourself one of those off and get writing the temperatures down quickly. And then I want to just show you my threads. This is what I actually use. So I picked these threads. Now these are a Madeira Lana, Bermelana thread that we sell in the shop actually. So I had threads to hand, which is important. So you don't know how much thread you're going to use, so make sure you can get it again. Because it did use a lot more than I thought I was going to use on some colours. We didn't have any more of this variegated, for example. They don't make it anymore, so I actually ran out of that, but I didn't need much because it wasn't that cold. So I've got a little bit left there on the skein. So red, dark orange, dark yellow, medium yellow, pale yellow, white, blue and turquoise, and then I have beads to match each one. I've got quite a lot of beads, so that wasn't a problem. You could just keep the rain the same colour if you wanted to do that. So you can see the beads go through the same colour range as well. So I had one set of beads for every thread that I used, and I don't think there was a colour I didn't use in the beads at all. I think I used every one of those, and then I added a few extra things as well. So I've got some sequins here for snow. And Swarovski crystals to add a little bit of extra coldness. Is that a word? Don't know. And then I had these little buttons as well, which was a little ladybird. And I put the bee on. You saw the bee earlier. I didn't put the ladybird on, so I might go back and put that on. Because I was wrapping it around the frame, it wasn't necessarily practical to put stuff on. So I have got a few extra bits that I might go through it, and I probably marked it on the sampler chart. And I'll go and stitch those on just as, you know, when the first ladybird appeared. I think I've got a butterfly somewhere as well, so I'll put that on. So you can add lots of things on it as well to make it even more interesting if you wanted to. So those are the colours that I used and the beads that I used. So I just want to talk quickly about the fabric that I used as well. So I mentioned earlier I used Aida fabric. I decided I wanted to do a counted one just because it was going to be very long. I wanted a bit of order to it, so I chose a counted fabric technique. So it's like a cross stitch. I think this is a 14 count, I think. So I did lots of counted stitches, but I didn't necessarily stitch on it using the holes. I could stitch just freestyle if I wanted. I just want to show you a few of those stitches that I did. Here, so what have we got? We've got some cable chain here, we've got a row of French knots here, there's a little bit of fly stitch, there's a buttonhole stitch here, more buttonhole here, lots of stem stitch and alternating stem stitch chain stitch. What else have we got? Some slanted satin, some normal satin. Some of them, oh, that's a woven one, I think. That's a woven running stitch, and just a normal running stitch off the top here. Put that down. So just a lot of mix of stitches just to make the texture more interesting, but you could do the same stitch if you want to. And I did find as I went I got a bit more creative as well with what I tried, and then when I was in a hurry I needed a fast stitch. There was a lot of running stitch and stem stitch in there, so it did change depending on how I was doing time-wise, which I thought was quite interesting. So just to show you some of the different stitches that you can try. So I didn't just talk about how I knew how long the fabric should be, so I did a rough estimate really. So I kind of measured it by a cross stitch, would take 2 holes, so I thought, well, that's 1 row, and then I multiplied that by 30, then I multiplied that by 12, and then I did a lot of counting to get the right length of fabric. Then I added a bit to allow for more stitching. So I actually did a really good job, I think, of working that out. So I had that much fabric left. So what I will do is I will measure the length of fabric that I used for this, and I'll put that in the description below, so that at least that's a starting point. I would suggest doing some calculations yourself, because it depends how much what stitches you use and how wide your stitches are, but this is a really good amount and I had some left, so I will put that below if you want to use this kind of fabric. So just a roundup of the project if you're interested in doing something like this and what I learnt from it. Okay, so number 1 is be methodical, keep a record of your temperatures, because you'll soon get lost if you don't do that, and mark every day off as soon as you've stitched it. Every day as soon as you've stitched it, that's really important. So you don't know how much thread you're going to use because you don't know what it's going to look like, you don't know what the temperature is going to be, so make sure you can get use a thread that you can get easily again if you run out. So don't use fancy stuff from your stash, if you haven't got very much of it, you will use quite a lot of it. I did use several skeins of some of the colours, so make sure you can get your thread again. So I did lose a bit of interest in the summer. It was really nice outside and I didn't want to stay in and stitch particularly, so that's when your chart comes in handy. Make sure you've got that so you can come back and refer to it. It didn't actually take me long to stitch a row, so probably 5 minutes on average, depending what stitch I was doing and how many beads it had. So when you get back into it, you can catch up quite quickly. That was really good. And if you haven't got much time at all, you can do half the length of row. You didn't need to do as long as I did. You could just do a little strip if you wanted to. So it is something that I thought was really manageable for a year to do every day. And if you got behind, it didn't matter because it was easy to catch up. So I really enjoyed doing this project. I'm really pleased to see it finished. It's quite hard to do a yearly project and stick with it, so I'm really glad I did. But it's easy to catch up on this, as I've just mentioned, if you do get behind. So I thought it was a really manageable thing to do. The other thing as well is I quite like designing mine and spending a lot of time doing that. So to not do that and let go of that process was really interesting. And just to let nature design it for me and not knowing what was next. And sometimes I put a colour and think, oh no, I don't want an orange row in there, I want something else. But you just go with it and actually it looks really gorgeous. You know, who's to argue with nature? Nature knows what it's doing. So I did love that process of letting go and let another process help design something that I didn't have any control over. And if I wanted a bit of control, I did that in the stitches that I chose and did it that way. So it still had a little bit of control over it, but I did enjoy just seeing what came out at the end of it. Okay, so all I need to do is to finish it and make it into something. Now it's pretty long, so it's probably going to be a hanging and probably going to be a soft hanging. It has gone a bit, the tension in the middle has gone a bit tight, so I may just have to stretch that out a little bit. But keep an eye on my community page. You can see that if you click on my name for this channel and go along the top, there's a community tab, because I'll put pictures in there of the process and how I finish this, so you can see what I do with it. So do follow along there and join in the discussion. But you could frame it if you wanted to. You might need a specialist framer to get something that big. So I'll probably just make it into a soft hanging, but do hang about and see what I do with that one. Okay, so I like to do a project every year, so I've done drawing every day, I've done my stitch sampler. So what am I going to do this year? So I think I'm going to make a book. So I've got felt for every day, for every month. I've got two sheets for every month of the year. And I'm going to just stitch on them. I haven't really worked out too much. So those are my pages. I've got some nice felt for the cover. Let me do it under this camera so you can see. So felt pages that I've just pre-cut already. I'm just going to stitch something on each one, something on that side, then I can sew the two together, and that will make me something more solid and something that's going to be the cover. I haven't quite worked out. I'm going to do that, wrap it around somehow. So I'm going to get quite creative with that. So again, I'll put some pictures of that as I go along on the community page, so follow that if you want to see what this turns out like, because I don't know what it's going to turn out like yet. I've got no idea. So I hope you've enjoyed that video and you're inspired to do your own temperature sampler. Do let me know if you are and how it goes, and if you think of some ideas that I didn't think about as well that you might like to do. I'll see you next time for something else really creative. I don't know what yet. So thanks for watching, guys. If you've enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. That helps more people to see it. And I'll see you next time.